Deep in northern Mexico, a highway cuts through the desert like a scar. It cost billions of pesos. It was built to move thousands of trucks a day. But drive along it, and you'll notice something strange. The road is empty. Wide, freshly paved lanes stretch for miles, with barely a truck in sight. Meanwhile, just a few kilometers away, the old route is jammed bumper to bumper. Drivers are choosing traffic over an open road. Why would anyone avoid a brand new corridor built specifically to save them time? Government officials call it a success story. Truckers call it something else entirely. Somewhere between the blueprints and the asphalt, something went wrong. And the answer isn't about construction. It's about what happens when you build a road, but forget to ask the people who actually drive it. The corridor runs through the state of Nuevo León, linking the port city of Altamira to the industrial hubs near Monterrey. On paper, it was supposed to change everything. Faster shipping, fewer accidents, less time stuck behind slow-moving convoys on the old two-lane highway. Government planners called it a logistics revolution. Ricardo Fuentes, a long-haul trucker with 15 years on these roads, remembers the day the new highway opened. "We thought our lives were about to get easier," he says. For the first few weeks, some drivers did switch over. Then, one by one, they went back to the old road. At a truck stop outside Ciudad Victoria, drivers began comparing notes. Something wasn't right. For truckers hauling valuable cargo through rural Mexico, that should have sounded like good news. Instead, it sounded like a warning. One driver, who asked not to be named, said the isolation made him nervous. Out there, if something happens, nobody sees it. Local mechanics notice something else. Trucks coming off the new corridor showed unusual wear patterns, and a few showed something stranger. Broken locks, tampered cargo doors. But drivers were making a different calculation, one that had nothing to do with speed or fuel costs. And whatever they were avoiding, it was enough to make them choose traffic, delays, and higher fuel bills over an empty road built just for them. And it was about to get worse. Word spread quickly among trucking companies. Dispatchers began quietly rerouting drivers, even when it cost extra hours. They refused to take the new route. Some said they'd rather quit. That kind of fear doesn't come from potholes or traffic. Reporters started asking questions, and the answers were strange. Local officials admitted the corridor had lower police presence than the old highway, but insisted it was temporary. Then, a rancher living near the corridor came forward. He said trucks sometimes stopped in the middle of the night, engines running. No cargo being loaded or unloaded. You learn not to ask questions out there, he said. Investigators pulled traffic camera footage along the corridor, expecting to find nothing unusual. Instead, they found gaps. Engineers blamed power surges, but when a maintenance crew went to inspect the equipment, they found something that didn't match the explanation at all. Cut wire, deliberately hidden. Someone didn't want that stretch of road being watched. The story wasn't just about truckers avoiding a highway anymore. It was about a highway built for one purpose, being used for something else entirely. And whoever was responsible didn't want anyone finding out what that was. Federal transportation auditors were called in, the first time in years for a project this size. Their initial report was almost dismissed. It seemed too ordinary. Toll revenue was far below projections, less than a third of what planners expected. But when auditors cross-checked toll records with weigh station data, the numbers didn't line up. At first, Engineers suspected faulty sensors. Then, a maintenance worker mentioned something almost in passing, an unmarked access road branching off the highway, one that wasn't on any official map. Auditors drove out to find it themselves. It was real, freshly graded, wide enough for heavy vehicles. Nobody could explain who built it or why it existed. Gennaro Salinas, an engineer who worked on the original highway design, said he'd never seen anything like it in the blueprints. That road isn't ours. It was never part of the project. He paused before adding one more thing. The unmarked road lined up almost perfectly with the same stretch of highway where the cameras had gone dark. That wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Someone had built an entire route within the route, hidden in plain sight, using the government's own project as cover. And once auditors realized that, they understood something far more disturbing. This wasn't a flaw in the corridor. It was the reason the corridor existed at all. That single sentence changed the entire investigation. Auditors stopped looking at the corridor as a transportation project. Federal contract records showed the corridor's route had been altered twice during construction, both times without public explanation. Each change moved the highway slightly closer to remote ranchland, far from the towns it was originally meant to serve. Gennaro Salinas remembered pushing back on one of those changes. He was told simply that it was a logistical decision. He didn't ask further. Nobody did. Investigators traced land permits near the unmarked access road and found a pattern just as troubling. Several parcels had changed ownership shortly before construction began, then changed again, just as quietly once the road was finished. Names on those documents led nowhere. Shell companies, dead ends. One retired customs official agreed to speak on condition his name be withheld. He explained that in remote regions, new infrastructure doesn't just move legal goods faster. It moves everything faster and with less oversight if the right people are involved before the first shovel hits the ground. Sometimes it's shaped by whoever benefits most from where the cameras don't reach. That explained the darkened footage. It explained the phantom road. It explained why truckers felt watched by something other than the government. The corridor hadn't failed. It had succeeded exactly as someone intended, just not for the reasons the public was told. And now, investigators faced a new problem. Proving it without becoming part of the story themselves. Word of the investigation reached federal authorities faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the unmarked access road was bulldozed, officially for safety reasons. No press conference, no named suspects, no public explanation. Gennaro Salinas said the silence afterward felt heavier than the discovery itself. When something disappears that fast, it means someone powerful wanted it gone. Toll stations along the corridor were quietly upgraded. New cameras, new patrols, new oversight from federal police instead of local authorities. Truckers noticed the change almost immediately. Ricardo Fuentes returned to the corridor for the first time in months. It felt different, he said. Watch, but in a good way this time. Traffic on the highway slowly increased, though it never reached the numbers originally promised. Economists say that's common after infrastructure gets tangled in scandal. Even after the problem is fixed, trust takes longer to rebuild than roads do. The retired customs official who spoke anonymously believes this case was never really about one highway. He said projects like this exist across the region, and most never get discovered at all. That single sentence lingered with investigators long after the case was closed. The Nuevo Leon corridor was built to move trucks faster across Mexico. Instead, it exposed something moving quietly in the shadows of legitimate development, something that used official infrastructure as a shield. Today, the road stands finished, functional, and finally being used the way it was designed for. But officials admit they may never fully know how many similar corridors in how many other regions still hide the same secret beneath their pavement. If this story made you question what's really being built around you, subscribe, because some roads lead to places we never expected.